Good morning.
And then we start. Okay. All right. So, good morning. Okay, there is still. Wait, there are a lot of people in the waiting room. Okay. All right. Okay, then we start. Good morning, everyone. It's Monday morning. It's Histoccino time, and we usually here present exciting papers that were recently published in neuroscience. But today I prepared something different. Today I will talk about a paper that was published long time ago, back in 19th century. So I don't know if we should call this Histoccino or something like that, open to any suggestions. But yeah, so these papers were published not so long after Broca's observation about his patient. So, and the papers are written by Hewlett-Jackson. I don't know how familiar you are with his work, but me personally, I got to know him like only in a context of my history of psychology lessons, and I never read his original papers. And honestly, I think he's not so popular and cited in current neuroscientific papers. We usually see like Broca, Wernicke, these names, but never Hewlett-Jackson. But I think he also deserves some attention. And today I will show you probably why. And today I will discuss several papers, but not in depth. So I'm sending them to the chat. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Can you see a paper? Perfect. So this is to first put in the context Hewlett-Jackson. I found a paper written by Head in 1921. This is a nice paper where he discusses about the history of discovery of aphasia, and he starts with research in Middle Ages, and then he goes into the discussion between naming this functional deficit of Broca's patient as aphemia or aphasia, because actually initially Broca called it as aphemia, not aphasia, and Broca was against naming it as aphasia. And then in the end of the paper, he starts to say why Jackson didn't get so much attention as other researchers, and he's naming 3 main reasons. One of them that like everything, these Broca things were happening in France, while this is a British neurologist. Second reason is the language, the way he's writing papers. Jackson is much more complicated. Also, like as Head writes, and we will see later that this is true, that Jackson was so anxious not to overstate his case that almost every page is peppered with explanatory phrases and footnotes. And yeah, so it was really hard to understand him, and it's easier to go with the mainstream, which brings to the third point, that his mindset, the way he was thinking about aphasia was different from what was in the mainstream. So that's why he kind of was overshadowed by huge localizationistic paradigms that started from Broca, and then like more or less start with Broca, because actually 20 years before Broca, there was Dax, a neurosurgeon, who also observed these dysfunctions. So yeah, so basically, then we get these a lot of box and arrow diagrams of language, like maybe you know also the parallelogram of Licht game. So yeah, but Jackson is totally different of thinking about this. And he published several papers, not only on aphasia, but he's known also in the context of epilepsy. Yeah, but mainly today I am going to talk about the language. So there is a paper that was even more exciting to me, because now I'm trying to find papers and research about structural and functional asymmetry of language. And then I see this paper published in 1874 on the nature of the duality of the brain. So he's pushing here the idea that, well, he starts with the idea that the nervous system is double physically. So this is such an obvious fact that we might forget to think how important, or if it is important or not. So we have two hemispheres, we have two eyes, two ears, and everything is double in our nervous system. The second point he's trying to put forward is that our nervous system is double, but not only the nervous system is physically double, but also it's double in function. And later in the paper, he explains in which way it is double, okay? And well, he's not stupid. He says, obviously, I know that we have this patient of Broca that showed language disorder when one of the hemispheres is damaged. And he's saying that this is clear, and no physician will deny that damage to but one hemisphere will make a man speechless. And he's saying is not important if the damage appears in the left hemisphere or right hemisphere. It can happen that a person will lose language abilities if one hemisphere will be damaged. But what is important, that language will be impaired if at least one of the hemispheres is damaged. Okay, so this is one of the things that he's saying. And he's saying that our nervous system is double in function, not in the sense that the second hemisphere has the exact function as the first one. It's not the mirror of that. And he's not claiming as well that two halves are such exact duplicates that either of them will do for speech. So it doesn't mean that both of them are for speech. And it doesn't mean that the left hemisphere having the exact functions as the right hemisphere. So this is not what he means that the function is double. What he means yeah, 1 second. Yeah, and also if we remember, I said that his language is a bit complicated, and he always uses footnotes to explain himself and so on and so forth. As you can see, already on the third paragraph, he has a footnote explaining what does he mean by the word brain. So he's very specific, and also if you read the sentence, this is a very striking fact, but one so well known that we are in danger of ceasing to think of its significance, of ceasing to wonder at it. A truth becomes a truism. So I'm not sure if Broca also was writing this philosophical way. So maybe this is also one of the reasons why he was a bit of ignored. So yeah, what I told now is that he says physically our function is double, and our system is functionally double. And I explained what is not double within his theorem. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, what he's trying to show, two things. He's saying that both halves are alike, they're similar, in the sense that they each contain processes for words. So not only left hemisphere, but both hemisphere contains processes for words. I will explain later also what does it mean. And second, that they are unlike, so they are not similar in the sense that the left is for use of words in speech, and the right for other processes in which words serve. So this is a bit abstract, but more concentrated. He says that the right is the half of the brain for the automatic use of words, and the left, the half for both the automatic and the voluntary use. So we already see it's maybe 10 years after Broca published it, and it's already there is a bit different way of thinking. Everyone, as far as I know, they focus on the left hemisphere and try to create schemes in the left hemisphere. But he noticed that this duplicate nature of human body. And let me see the time. Okay. Yeah, and then he explains what does he mean by speech. Speech is propositioning. It's not utterance of words. And he also notes that if person cannot speak, right, it doesn't mean, it also means that he will not be able to write. Why? Because external speech and internal speech for Jackson is qualitatively are not different, in the sense that when you're speaking aloud, you're basically making more kind of energizing of your body to produce a sound. But basically, if you externally cannot speak, it means you internally cannot speak. And he says that if he can say nothing to himself, so internally, it means that therefore he has nothing to write. So it means that a person who cannot talk internally to him cannot also use another mode of expressing himself with hands, because internal speech is also impaired. Okay. And then comes his one of the main ideas is that speechless person does not imply wordless. And this is important because if we take the Broca's patient, right? That patient, was not actually, that person was speaking. That person was producing some words, and he was actually swearing and using some automatic words like yes or no. So this utterance, usage of some words, some that are not, have no meaning, or they are just emotionally triggered. This becomes one of the focuses of Jackson, and he publishes another paper. This one, no, not this one. Sorry, this one, on affections of speech from disease of the brain, where there is like 20-page paper where he talks about different types of utterances of patients with aphasia and analyzes this. So he's kind of focusing on the fact that patients with aphasia can actually produce something, and he's focusing his attention to that, on this automatic speech. Yeah. And when he says also speechless does not imply wordless, it means that when we speak to a person, we make this person victim of our words, as he say. So, for example, when I talk to you, I explain something. You, according to Jackson, automatically you automatically process my words in a way that I put my words in a certain order, making you like helping you to structure a sentence without any without any effort you are making to create a sentence. Maybe this time no, because I was a bit messy in explaining something, but when there is a clear sentence, you are hearing it, and if you don't have words inside you, you will not understand it. And that's what he meant about this patient, that if you try to talk with a patient with aphasia and use very simple words, that patient might be able to understand you. And that will prove the fact that this patient is not wordless, but that patient is speechless. Yeah, so the idea that then it comes is that he, in another paper, he divides language, that there is language intellectual and there is emotional language. And a patient with Broca is suffering from deficit of intellectual language. Emotional language is still spared. And emotional language is a language that is triggered by emotion and is having is usage of some blasphemies or swearing words or very automatic ways like yes or no. Also, he talks about the fact that patients with aphasia can sing. So he's paying attention on things that were not paid so much attention before. And I was curious to see if someone is researching emotional language nowadays. And so I found a paper published in 2018 that is trying to research the idea of emotional language, but even in that paper, Jackson was not cited. Maybe there is emotional intelligence, but not emotional language so well researched. But I think that this can open up some research area because I thought, okay, we have a disease actually that uses swearing words involuntarily, automatically. And it came to my mind Tourette syndrome. I Googled, okay, Tourette syndrome, what is happening with Tourette syndrome? Is there some, I don't know, decrease the integrity of white matter tracts? I don't know. So I found that there is a paper that talks, not so many papers, but there is a paper that talks that in the right hemisphere, the inferior longitudinal fasciculus, fronto-occipital fasciculus. So they are showing decreased fractional anisotropy, but I need to double check. But this is what I briefly looked into the paper, and these tracts are traditionally not involved in the language, but there are there are papers coming out showing that there is involvement of these tracts, and so maybe these tracts are, according to Jackson, will be kind of connected with this automatic speech, automatic language, emotional language. I don't know. So I think this is an area of research that can give some interesting results if we pay much more attention to work of Jackson, because this idea of emotional and intellectual language, and that the left hemisphere is for automatic and voluntary usage, and the right hemisphere is just for automatic usage of words. In the sense of receiving information. Yeah, I don't know. I hope it was not so much messy, and you get some ideas about his work. And I hope I did not misunderstood him. But yeah. If you have any questions, yeah, I see your hand. So let me 1 second. First, I stop sharing, and then, yeah, Chris.
Yeah, thank you for presenting that. It's really interesting, and first, it's interesting to see that some so like he was what 200 years ago or something, and seeing that they already showed flaws in the localizationism ideas. But what's weird is that it is still going now, like localizationism is not gone. And a lot of studies are assuming that each brain area is pretty much independent and doing something on its own, and you can pinpoint a cortical area and say that's the function that it's doing. It's just weird that it's in 200 years, because even at this time, Jackson was not the only one to talk about that. There was like Wernicke and other researchers. And yeah, I wanted to go towards the reasons why this didn't catch up, but why people vastly preferred the localizationism to alternatives. And what do you think? Do you think it's only because of the writing that was a little bit complex, or there were other factors that led to that?
You mean the factors that led to him not be so
popular? Yeah.
So I think the main reason is that it was because I think it's much easier to find a patient with a damage and associate it with a deficit. So you basically say, okay, I hate my brain, I don't know, in this side, my mood decreased, so my mood is located is here. But this is obviously not the case. But I mean, when it is much more simple to create theories this way, the papers will go much faster, and then no one will go and read a paper that starts with a truth becomes a truism. Like, it's better to have a paper that shows, okay, there is a damage in this area, and this patient is having this type of function, this deficit of this function. But also, Jackson also said, I'm trying to find it, but
that works at the beginning. It's like it makes sense at the beginning in science to use the simpler explanation.
yeah.
But when observation and experiments show contradictions to the simple idea, you have to start using the alternatives, that even if they might be more complex.
Yeah,
And
but
the weird thing is that in 200 years, there has been a lot of contradictions to the localizationism.
yeah, but the problem here is that the cool part of Jackson is said that Jackson is not saying that Broca is wrong. He's not saying that Broca is did some like false science. No, he's saying that's true, but the tension, it's just a fact that Broca found a brain with the I don't know, the posterior parts of the frontal convolution and things like that. It is a fact, okay? But the problem is that the focus of Broca is in one place, and the focus of Jackson not only on that place as well, not only on that place. So he's kind of looking into something that was not caught by attention of others. So when we are doing a research on localization, I mean, if we are having awake surgery, for example, awake surgery of patients, right? When we do electrostimulation of, I don't know, one of the tracts, and we see, let's say, speech arrest. And we see speech arrest, but this is going to be just association. We have a problem, and there is and then we have a speech arrest, but we cannot say that speech arrest is localized in that white matter tract. And this is also what Jackson also said, that the damage to one thing, it doesn't mean that it is I find to locate the damage which destroys speech and to locate speech are two different things. So
that's pretty advanced.
And this is what we have like right now. If I go and read a paper about inferred longitudinal fasciculus, I don't know, there is a speech arrest, and so we say that this tract is for initiation of speech. This is really something that's still going on, and I think it's because it's easy to fall into this interpretation of the facts, but we cannot say that the fact that neurosurgeon is stimulating that tract, that the person is not having, no, the person is having speech arrest, but how do we interpret this is another question. So, and for that we need to think more theoretically, and it is much harder, right? So I think the reason why localization is still going on because it's easier, and it's easier to focus our attention to the obvious fact that the person is having speech arrest. But thinking in another way, it's much harder, and yeah, maybe that's the reason. I don't know. Yeah, Eduardo, maybe the quick one because it's 10. Yeah. You're muted.
Sorry, actually, you stole my question, which was about the quote of localizationism. So, yeah, maybe just would like to underline that. Yeah, probably the one of the most interesting facts about Jackson work is he's pointing out to the fact that localizationism has strong limitations already back in the 19th century. That isn't pretty much interesting. Also to add something to what Chris said, it could be curious to track why localization is like prevailed through the history of neuroscience. Because if I can remember well, even the first Broca's publications, he was pretty hesitant in like stating about localization and especially about lateralization of even speech production. Even when he presented like 6 or 7 cases of aphasic patients with left lesions, he was still like, yeah, I do not dare to draw any conclusion about lateralization of speech. So it's curious that now Broca's is like the symbol of localization and lateralization of human language, when actually it wasn't really the case.
Yeah, I mean, also also near Broca, you told me about Pierre Marie, and also in this paper had talks that this person published an aggressive title, a paper with aggressive title, the third left frontal convolution does not play any special role in the function of language. So maybe this can be another paper that someone can discuss later in Histoccino. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe for the next episode. Yeah, Pierre Marie papers are crazy hard.
Okay, so it's time to say goodbye for now, and have an exciting week, and thank you for joining and discussion.